Trump 2.0 is just fundamentally different on the subject than 1.0.
You're giving me reason for optimism, Matthew.
Optimism, pessimism, I don't know. I'm an analyst and a realist. I try to be a pragmatist. I don't know what scenario is optimal here. I just think we're heading towards a pattern of disclosure that's, in my view, fundamentally more like there's controlled disclosure, catastrophic disclosure that people talk about. I think it's more like a chaotic disclosure, kind of this ping pong ball where, and disclosure is a process of social sense making. It's not like the release of information, it's the absorption and integration of information into worldviews. And that requires people being ready to have the conversation and to incorporate different levels of this into their worldviews. It isn't just a simple, there's craft that can do things that we can't do. It's a much more complicated, shift in people's understanding of reality.
I mean, there are very legitimate economic concerns too, aren't there? I mean, a large number of the top 100 on the US stock exchange would be dependent on the success of fossil fuels as the primary energy imperative for the world. Imagine if energy was discovered to be freely obtainable from ZPE, zero-point energy, quantum vacuum energy. Imagine if that allegation is true. Wouldn't it mean that the entire stock exchange of the United States would probably drop dramatically in value overnight?
Well, yes, there's lots of risks. There's financial stability risks. There's stranded asset risks that you just talked about. There is a much more social, much more, I'd say, strategic risk associated with people's inability to discount the future, right? Because even if you had free energy, right, it takes a while to maybe transition that into society, right? You could, depending on the nature of the engineering that's required, et cetera, before you get the energy return on energy investment payoff from that, it could be a dramatic civilizational change, but it might not be an overnight shift. And that inherent uncertainty, right, is what breaks the financial models governing all asset pricing, right? Like the 30-year treasury note, right, is sort of pricing in a smoothly discounted, time value of money. And if that is now subject to a radical uncertainty, now people really can't price out anything into the future. People stop. They don't know how to save. Most asset prices in the world now can't fundamentally be priced. And that's not just the top 100, literally every asset, right? Real estate, mortgages, like everything just basically comes to a halt. You couldn't essentially have a pricing mechanism in that type of scenario, which is truly disruptive, right? Which is why I think you need to have, on the technology side, I think it'll be I don't think there's like a snap your finger, a new technology that fundamentally changes the paradigm. That is a risk I'm paying attention to, but I think there's other financial stability risks associated just with like the event of disclosure or that transition period where kind of the preference falsification and the cascade triggers, and that uncertainty is maximal. And then you need to reduce that uncertainty as quickly as possible so that people can then price the future in something like a consistent way. And that's how you get financial markets, is to price the future.
So, Matthew, final question. I want you to put on your crystal ball. What's going to happen? Are we going to see big D disclosure, or is this all going to be swept under the carpet for another 30 years?
I'm never 100%. I think we are on an irreversible path towards the reality of non-human intelligence being a subject of mass awareness. I don't know exactly how soon, but I think that's an irreversible process at this point. And yeah, it's just a matter of the path to that point. Yeah.
Well, I think we'd put on our seatbelts and it's going to be a bumpy ride. But Matthew Pines, thank you so much for giving us your analysis on Reality Check. Look forward to having you on again sometime. And good luck in your new role with the Bitcoin Institute. Maybe one day you can explain to us why we should all buy cryptocurrency. I'm not yet convinced.
I think these are more related subjects than you would imagine.
Thanks very much, Matthew.
Thanks for having me.